Hi Leyla, how are you doing today? You all right?
Pretty good. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Oh, good, good. Yeah, very good, thank you. I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It really, really means a lot.
Well, it is absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And like, I see that, you're into like sustainability and, looking after, the environment and helping people to do that.
Yes, it's something that I started relatively recently, just because of my educational career, kind of just time-wise. It managed to get started about a year ago, where we set up our own little company in mangrove conservation and restoration. So that's, yeah, it's quite a new chapter in the field, and not a lot of people actually know what mangroves are. So we figured this might actually be a good thing to do because I live in Canada most of the time, and most of my family is in Belgium. So there's a lot of flying back and forth and carbon emissions. And we were thinking of a way, well, how can we compensate for the impact that we're having? What is it that we could do to be less harmful towards the environment? And we came up with planting trees, mangroves specifically. So they're a special kind of tree that can grow in salt water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're the little barrier between the land and the ocean, but they also connect the land and the ocean. And because of this unique ability of theirs, they're able to store a lot more carbon than other forest types on the planet.
Wow. So that's based on because of the salt water, is it?
Yes, so they bury the carbon. So mangroves are known for their very elaborate root system. So I'm sure that anyone who's ever watched like a BBC documentary on nature, they will see trees with really like prop roots sticking out
Mm,
and going back into the soil. So these systems really capture the carbon in the sediment. And because the water comes in, it just gets washed away by the ocean, sticks in the sand, and doesn't come back up as easily as you would in a terrestrial environment.
wow. No, I find nature fascinating and like I never knew that. And I find like we've got I won't go top it too much, but like we know I've got a garden with plants and trees, and I find it like amazing how nature works and the root system and how things grow. I find it fascinating, and I think like you said, by planting trees to help the environment and the oxygen and decrease certain levels of like carbon emissions and things like that, then it all kind of works in it to an advantage.
Yes, yes. Especially also because there's a lot more to just the carbon. Um, it, Recent studies, like 10 to 15 years ago, scientists have started specifically at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, but I'm sure other organizations also work in this field, is that they've realized that trees can actually communicate with each other using chemical signals. So the root system of a forest is all connected with each other, and they found that mother trees are more likely to help their baby trees by reallocating some nutrients that way, or have that chemical connection going. So we don't fully understand what's happening. We just realize that this is actually a thing that trees can communicate with each other chemically, and
Wow.
it brings up a lot more questions of, okay, well, what is this consciousness? Is this something they're aware of? Is this a passive thing? How does it actually work? So it's a lot more than just carbon sequestration from the environment. It is part of their photosynthesis, but that's not the main purpose of trees. Of course, they are ecosystem builders. They're the basis of ecosystems on land and in the ocean. There's no trees in the ocean, but we have macroalgae like kelp forests, for example, who have very similar roles in creating and shaping the base of ecosystems there.
Wow. No, it's amazing. Like, and well, what you said, like how like trees are connected and they communicate like through like chemicals and um, like I said in my garden, like we've got plants and things. And talking to trees, actually, I've got like a few of these ferns, like these ferns,
Yeah.
and like we've got like these aliens. There were these like plants that kind of shoot up, and really, like one was growing here, then the other one was growing here, and as they were shooting up, it was kind of like bending towards one another, and I was just like, it's amazing. It's like there was kind of like like meeting in the middle, but
So
but
for ferns, it's probably because they're shade-loving plants, because they often grow in and in the shrub layer of forests on the forest floor, and they don't get a lot of sunlight, so they might be giving each other shade by growing towards each other
Yeah.
when the sun turns around and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. No, plants and nature are fascinating, like I said, and I think, like you said, by sustainability is quite a big thing now. I think especially when COVID happened, we talked about this yesterday briefly. The impact it had on the oceans. The oceans were like where canals were clearer in Venice. You mentioned some other places as well. I mean, there are a few examples, and I think it's something that is getting more into the more widespread in the media.
Yeah, specifically about the whales and the boat traffic, because we were all forced to stay inside. We weren't out on the water creating a lot of noise. I don't know if you've ever been scuba diving or free diving, but when you're underwater, you can actually really hear how noisy that environment is. Often people think, oh, it's quiet, there's no sound there, but that's absolutely not true. Over a reef, you can hear fish crackling away and bubbling, and they communicate using their swim bladders to make sounds, for example. And some of them even have like a morning chorus, so they sing like the birds, but over a reef. And when boat traffic is eliminated, a lot of these sounds have the opportunity to be heard by animals. And whales in particular, a lot of cetaceans use similar frequencies to boat noise. So it's completely canceled out, and they tend to avoid being around people just because we're so noisy, and they can't talk to each other. It's the same as we would be, like, for example, go to a very busy city street. You'd have to be yelling at each other to be able to hear what the other person is saying. So that's similar to them. And if it's quiet, then why not explore the more shallow waters and see what's there for them to pick up on, like maybe something to play with for the dolphins, or some more food. But generally they live close to shore. So it's not unsurprising that they would, mosey into quiet harbors when they can.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And like, I think like where I live, like they've had like dolphins sometimes, like you said, come into like the harbor, or seals, and it's do you think that's like what you said, because they're kind of like going into other avenues to try and communicate with other like animals?
Yeah, so we weren't on the boats anymore, so the engine noises that the boats make wasn't present. So it's a lot more quiet for them. And it's the same thing as people. We would avoid the busy streets when we can. We would rather go to the city park. But if no one's actually making any noise on the busy streets, then we would also venture into those areas, and that's what happened. With sea life, is a lot of the time they're just too busy for them to be able to communicate. They're really noisy. It's very stressful. They might get hit by some boats. People might be really intrigued by seeing them and chase them a little bit, or want to pet them. And so it's quite stressful environment for them. But if everything falls away, then they're quite curious creatures. It's their natural habitat to be relatively close to shore. So it just makes sense for them to return and take back what we took away from them. By being
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, I mean, I think, we need to be careful, don't we? Like how we, because a lot of people sometimes will litter, they will throw things in the sea, plastic. I mean, plastic's a big one. I remember watching like a documentary on BBC, and they were like, fish tangled in bits of plastic and things like that. And they said they did like tests on the ocean floor, and they found like plastic even on the ocean floor. But what are some of the ways that that can all kind of be like regulated and stopped? Do you think like like cleanups and things like that?
Well, cleanups will absolutely be necessary, just because we have so much plastic in the ocean. At this rate, we're currently dumping about 8 million metric tons of plastic into the ocean every year. So that's about 22,000 tons every single day. So that's a lot, and that's what we've measured. So obviously there's a lot more that is illegal, that we're not measuring, that we just can't see. And what people don't know is that even though these big pieces of plastic are in there, we could take them out of the environment, but when they break down, they just turn into smaller pieces of plastic. So plastic doesn't disappear, it just becomes smaller. And these are ingested by animals. So sea creatures. So if you eat fish, for example, drink beer, even just breathe the air, we take in thousands upon hundreds of thousands of pieces of plastic every year ourselves. So I think that should be the goal, like here, just really focusing on those numbers and thinking, okay, oh wow, is this something I even want to live in? Because we are feeling those impacts. So we're just polluting the food chain, and we're at the top of the food chain, so we're getting all of the impacts from that. And having that mindset like, oh wow, this is what we are doing, so maybe I should avoid plastic packaging. So when you go to the grocery store, I know in the UK it's kind of tricky because I was shocked about how much plastic they actually use. But here in Belgium, in Canada, I know that if you bring your own little reusable bags that are made out of cotton, they could be recycled plastic, they can be a lot of things. You can just put the fruit in the bags and you pay by weight. Yeah. And you can just keep on reusing those bags instead of having the plastic packaging. So that's one. Another one could be to start making a lot of things yourself. So fresh meals, stop going and getting out takeout Chinese and bringing all of that styrofoam back and just throwing it out. Or if you go to the bakery and you put everything in a little plastic bag, it's just really overwhelming after a while. Or the need that some people have that they need to wear a different outfit every single time they go out because they've posted that outfit on social media already, so they can't rewear that. It's huge because about every 10 minutes, this statistic is from Australia, every 10 minutes there's, I think, 6 tons of clothes that are thrown out.
Jeez.
And a lot of this can be reused. These clothes are still, you can wear them. They've been used once or never. And having that change of mindset that we do not need more, we just need better quality for a longer period of time. And buying that new shirt is not going to make your life a happier life. It's just going to give you a little buzz for 5 minutes because you get excited about wearing this new shirt. But other than that, it's not really going to change the quality of your life. And this is really just a big mindset problem that we have. Not so much, we don't have the ability to do something about it. You have to be willing to do something about it.
Yeah. No, massively, I agree. The impact is huge, isn't it? And I think we don't think about it. We're just so busy. Well, that's an excuse, isn't it? So busy. People get caught up in not really paying attention to it. They're just doing, and they're not thinking outside the box and thinking about the impact of that and these things. You know, I used to be one of those people, you know, a few years ago. I'd buy a shirt, I'd go out with my friends, I'd wear it once or twice, and then that was it. I'll probably not wear it again. And it's bad because, you know, you accumulate all these clothes. Those clothes can be broken down. They can be recycled, like you said. You know, used for different things. You know, curtain cloth, you know, making something with it, instead of just building up and being dumped. Yeah, no, it does definitely open your eyes. And I think, like, so much, like you said, especially with shopping, you know, like I went to Tesco yesterday, like supermarket, and, you know, everything is all in plastic, like you said, like, you know, basil, pak choy, it's all in these plastic bags. And like you said, how easy it is to have like cotton or a material that could be broken down. You know, if I go to the local shop, there's nothing really there are a few items in plastic bags, but all the produce and the vegetables were all local, and they just kind of throw them in a wooden container, and you just grab it, put it in a paper bag thing that they have that can be broken down. You know, and it's just like you said, recycling it and just reusing things instead of buying like a takeout that has, you know, lots of styrofoam. I mean, you mentioned yesterday, you know, you worked in hospitality, you know, like me, and you see how many things that get ordered in, and how much plastic, how much cardboard, and how much stuff just piles up, and there's no need for it. It's like if you order things on Amazon sometimes, you get a big, massive plastic container, and you're like,
Yeah. I recently bought a camera. I dabble in some amateur photography, and I had this, the camera is quite small. It's a Canon 90D from the EOS series. So it's not a huge camera, but the box was, I don't know, about half a meter in length. And it was just
Oh my God.
filled with with plastic. And it said the plastic could be recycled, but at the same time, I'm like, well, was this really necessary? Like, you dropped this box off at my house, you could have just given me the camera instead of this gigantic box with a tiny little box of the camera, and then everything else be plastic. So it's also the expectation people have that when in the hospitality industry, for example, whenever we would reorder linens or towels, they would be packed individually in pieces of plastic, but
Oh,
we
right.
still would have to wash everything anyway before we can put them on the beds and have people use them. So I don't see, why is this necessary? Why don't just pop them into big boxes and pick the boxes up again after a little while and keep on reusing the same boxes and just, you know, have a closed loop cycle for all of these linens. And it's just, but people don't think about it because we're not educated about it. We're relatively young people, and so we're the new generation, like borderline Gen Z millennials, and even we haven't experienced any kind of education in school. I did, because I specifically chose to go study conservation and biology and life sciences. But throughout high school, all of the mandatory experiences that you go through, none of them are tailored towards sustainability. None of them are tailored towards showing you what your impact is on nature, or how you can decrease that, or even just building up the understanding of what a linear economy is, rather than looking at, maybe we can go for circular economies, you know, empowering entrepreneurship for young people to really change those things. So there's a lot of frustration there, because when you hit the real world, you start talking to people, you start seeing things, and it just feels like there's no way out. It doesn't feel like you can make a difference, whereas that is absolutely not the case. It's just we're not taught how.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think, like, you know, with the camera in the box, like, I've had that many times. My mom's ordered stuff, and it's not, like a really small item, a bit like this mug, and it was in a box with not just the cardboard shavings and bits of plastic, but like airbags, you know, the bags of air.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like a small item. Like, they're just doing it just like take the piss. Yeah, we need to be more conscious about it. And I think, like you said, which is key, is you know, the education. Like, you know, people need to be educated on it. It needs to be in the curriculum somewhere, surely. You know, moving forward, because people talk about global warming, you know, the impact on the environment, and these are all key important things that, you know, should be somewhere in the curriculum, you know, or you know, or briefed on it. And they just, it's that little bit, isn't it? It's that little percentage. It's that little bit of effort can make a big difference, you know, if we all just do our part, that bit.
Yeah. There's a lot of simple things, like, other than, you know, reusable mugs and then reusable shopping bags, and avoid buying foods that are wrapped in plastic and single-use anything, really. Not, it's not just single-use plastics, it's single-use anything. That's quite a big issue. But there's apps, for example, if you want to go look at what fish is sustainably caught, because about 90% of the ocean is either completely over-harvested, over-exploited, or harvested to full capacity. So there's only 10% left that is actually in quote-unquote pristine conditions. The ocean is 70% of our planet, so if it collapses, it's a big problem. And there's an app. You can download an app on your phone. If you go look at MSC, if you go look at Monterey Bay Aquarium, depending on what country you live in, you can look at the fish species that are sustainably harvested that year. And to make it even easier, in the UK, there's an MSC label on all of the fish that is sustainably harvested. So you can look at the fish packet, and if it has that little label on there, it's a blue fish that says MSC certified. It's sustainably caught, which is based on a system of looking how big the fish population is, and they only take as much as the fish population can regenerate for the next year to come by spawning. So there are little labels on there that you can see as a consumer. but nobody teaches you what those things mean, and that you should, look at buying those fish rather than other fish. So some brands, big brands, what's the pirate with the gray hair for the fish sticks?
Oh, is it Bird's Eye or something?
Yeah, so some of those brands and some of the fish that are caught are actually MSC certified compared to other brands, and they're not necessarily more expensive. So just looking for that blue fish, and that can make a big impact, because everyone would be doing that. We wouldn't be as over harvesting the oceans as we are now.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I'm going to be looking now when I next go to the supermarket. I'll be looking at fish. I'll be only looking for the ones with the little blue fish on it now. No, it's so interesting. Sorry.
No, sorry, I interrupted you.
I know. So I was going to say, like I said, it's just being educated and briefed on things. Like people. That's quite an important thing. What you mentioned, and it's like, if you're not educated on it, you don't know. You're just buying it and getting it.
Yeah, it's a big mindset shift that needs to start, and I think the younger generation is doing quite a good job at it. If you look at Youth for Climate and all of the movements that are starting, defunding that is happening in the fossil fuel industry. The UK recently got ticked on its fingers because they were, going for carbon neutrality by certain timeframes, but they weren't including all of their overseas projects. So they were creating these massive footprints in Africa and Asia and all of these developing countries. And they recently said, okay, well, we have to take these into consideration. So they're slowly defunding those and refunding and putting the money in green energy investments and more sustainable goals rather than what they were doing previously. But it's crazy to me to think that governments have to be, drawn to court or have a massive group of people come to the streets to say, hey, well, you should be doing the right thing here and looking at all of your impacts rather than just what you think is directly your responsibility because it's happening in this country. But
yeah. No, I agree. I think it is pretty crazy how, certain movements have to happen for, certain kind of parts of the government to, think about it and hold meetings, and, the amount of work that has to go into it and organising all of that for something to actually take place. It's a very, very long process, isn't it, when you think about it? And it's like, well, all that time it takes to sort all that out, or everything else is all happening in the meantime. So, why not just say, okay, have a meeting, it's what we need to do, and then, outline it. But yeah, no, I think, we all need that, kind of international effort. We're all part of this, we're all connected. I think that's something COVID highlighted, we're all in this together, and we're in terms of the environment and sustainability, we are all in this together, so why not do your part? And it makes you feel better, if you recycle, if you reuse something.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a positive mindset that you're creating for yourself that you can pull through in day-to-day life. It's more, you feel more connected, you feel more as a part of something whole, and humans, we are social creatures, so that it's quite important for our psyche to be able to have those connections and those groups. But on the counter end of those things, you also have similar experiences on the other edge of the spectrum, of course. So you have people who go for sustainability, but you also still have that connectedness on the other side of things, where people are like, oh, but it's just, a government conspiracy, they're just doing this for tax money. Which in some cases, I might say that it could very well be true that they are doing this for tax money. So it doesn't improve people's motivation or, inspire them to take action. And that's something we have to combat. And I think that starts by educating our children, but also taking away all of those conflict terms. So you've mentioned the terms climate change quite a bit. I've mentioned that quite a bit, but really it comes down to a whole range of different factors. There's not one thing that contributes to climate change. There's not one focus that we have there. obviously some things come up in the news more, like CO2 emissions, but at the same time, there are other greenhouse gases, like methane is a popular one. And we tend to think of climate change like, oh, wow, there's no way we can change the climate of this entire planet by just driving a car, because it just seems silly, something so small. But what they forget, there's 7 billion, almost 8 billion people now on this planet doing some kind of activities that aren't very beneficial for the environment. So I like to talk about, well, do you believe that deforestation is happening? Do you believe that we are overexploiting the oceans? Do you think that, there's this consumer economy that is driven by more and more and more and consistent gains and growth, and really looking at each individual compartment of anthropogenic climate change? And that is really falling back on our behaviors, because there's no one who's going to say, or very, very few people who will say, it's like, no, deforestation of the Amazon or the forests in Africa, Southeast Asia, that's not a thing. We're not cutting down trees. No way. There's no humans who do that. There's nobody who says that this is not happening, whereas it is one of the major drivers of climate change. There's also nobody who says that we do not have a linear economy. Everyone knows we have a linear economy. So breaking it down, you take a lot of the resistance away, because you're not taking responsibility for everything in one go, which can be a very hard barrier for people to cross, because that means they have to face themselves and look at it. It's like, wow, I am actually doing all of these horrible things. I must be a horrible person, without realizing that this is just the way society is set up. You're not a horrible person. You were born into this, and you can change it, but you have to make a lot of changes to your life to be able to do that. And that is by far not always feasible.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And I think, like, what you said, with, like, the way people think, just like you said, people, are very linear with things, and climate change. And, a lot of people believe that, climate change isn't a thing. They think it's a load of nonsense, some people. I think, like, people need to be open to it. You can't be ignorant around these topics, and to be open-minded to it. It's like, I only know so much about it. I'm very open-minded, so I'm learning from what you're saying, and it's having that open-mindedness and being open to it and taking on, perspectives and facts, rather than people just thinking, oh yeah, well, no, it's not a thing, or or thinking like, why should I do it? So it's like I said, forming new habits and just thinking about how you go about things and how, the impact that we're having.
Exactly.
Because it's future generations as well. It's not just ours. It's, our children's children and so on.
Yeah. And it's really hard to connect to, because a lot of people here in the West, while we are the biggest polluters, we're the main cause of everything, we don't necessarily feel the impacts, because we can pay our way through things. We have the financial ability to buy this house, and we have a car, we have a stable job, maybe not so much with Corona anymore, but still more so than in other places around the world where they're poverty stricken, they feel the effects of drought, or floods, or just this change in climate, where people can see that they've grown up there their entire lives, they've been doing this their entire adulthood, and now they've seen the last 5 to 10 years how many changes that have been happening, have been struggling to maintain their fields or get to work, or their house has flooded 3 times in the last decade. And these are all things that are new to them. And it's these people who do not have such a large voice that are actually feeling the impacts the most. And this disconnect that we have with humans, but also just with all animals and all of nature, it's questionable as to if this is really the healthiest way to go through life. And it's partly there because we have that lack of education, but also because we've removed ourselves from nature as if we stand above it. So we have our cities, we have our houses, we have our gardens where we plant the plants that we want to have in them. And we don't connect with the wild anymore. The wild is seen as this, horrific, dangerous place that we should protect ourselves from. But we forgot that's where we came from. And more than 50% of cancer drugs, for example, are derived directly from natural origins, from plants, from coral reefs. And we need that to sustain ourselves also, which is very ironic that that's what we are destroying in the process.
It's what's the word? It's very, we're like you said, we think we're kind of in control, when in reality, nature, probably has more power in some way. Like, nature's the one in control. We're just kind of on the planet, but we need to kind of, it's like yin and yang, isn't it? There's nature, there's us. We need to work in kind of that balance with nature. Otherwise, it just gets tangled with, how we're seeing with pollution and things like that.
And the yin and yang within ourselves also are very unbalanced in our feminine and masculine energies, because of stereotypes, because of societal roles and expectations, where women, less so in the Western world, but again, many places don't have these kind of equalities. We're expected to have children and want to have children and raise the families, and not so much go for a career and have an education, where men, they have to be big and strong and they can't have emotions. They have to keep everything locked up inside. They don't cry. And that's just not how we've evolved anymore. This is not something that we can carry through in modern day society. And a lot of people are struggling to find that identity and have that balance within themselves. And if they don't have it within themselves, how can we expect it to have that externally also?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And I think, like you said, like society, moves so fast, and businesses, they want results, they want performance. And, there's a lot of business, some businesses are looking for people who are just there to, do the job, get results. And I think, like, people are more than just robots. We're not robots. We're people, want people like that, because, they want them to block out their emotions, and, and that comes down to, like we were talking about, lack of empathy. And, I think it's just taken that step back and just, empathizing with people, and, and relating to them, because we're human beings, we're emotional beings. And, if someone is happy in their workplace, or they're being related to, they're going to perform better anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny to see how we're one of the most conscious beings on this planet, yet we do so well living unconsciously.
Yeah.
So it's a form of ignorant bliss, I think, because if you want to learn about something, we have the resources to do so, and many people choose not to. Recent statistics, I don't actually know if this is true or not, but my brother recently told me that about 7% of the population in the United States believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. And this, to me, is something that, okay, well, how do we combat this mindset, this behavior, where we just accept what we see as the truth, rather than going out and learning and educating ourselves on a daily basis, and knowing that this is a growth that goes throughout our entire life. There's no just, okay, at 18 you're done with school, you graduated for life, and you never have to learn a new thing again. It's not very progressive or helpful.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, like, people kind of, they just get stuck in their ways. They get to a point where, like I said, they'll leave college, they'll go to get a job, and then that's all they kind of do, and, if someone's happy doing that, that's fine. But I think, there is so much more out there to learn. There's so many other angles to look at things from. There's no right or wrong time to start something. There's no right or wrong time to learn something new. Like, there's people who've done their PhD, gone to university in their 60s. So, I mean, there's no set time. We can. It's our choice, really, if we want to evolve or not.
No, that's absolutely true. I agree with that 100%.
And I think we can kind of come together and help one another, and to like help each other evolve, because it's like it's not a one-way street, is it?
No, it's not. So similar movements would be, one very, very controversial one is the Me Too movement, and how it's threatening a lot of men, and then really asking the questions like, well, but it's also not threatening a lot of men. So why is it that you would feel threatened in those situations? Like, what is that barrier there for you? Because it's not about just women. This is about the entire society that is hurting women, but it's also hurting men, because it's not a healthy mindset to think that it's okay to go and sexually assault someone. That also implies some kind of role and expectations that men have in this world that doesn't necessarily reflect what is happening internally or externally anymore at this point. So it's very tricky to think about these big problems and trying to solve them, because they're so global that it makes it very difficult to come up with one solution that everyone can start implementing. So we need to learn how to work together. And COVID recently has shown that we can do this. So there are countries like New Zealand or Australia, some Eastern European countries who've done exceptionally well under these circumstances, and other countries who haven't. And it just really makes me wonder what's behind that. And obviously people are behind that. So what is it that we're internally fighting within ourselves, and as a society, putting ourselves in certain roles? And more research, I think, needs to be done on that subject. But we also should really start listening to the people who do that research and tell us, like, maybe we should try that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, like, there's so much work and research that goes into things, and I think, people need to give those people credit.
Yeah.
And I think it's really lovely that there are people out like you out there who are passionate about these topics, and you're putting a lot of time, because a lot of time and research goes into it. And you mentioned you university, and you want to do your PhD, and that takes a lot of time and energy and effort. And I think it takes so much energy and drive to do it. And I think it's good because you can educate people, especially like myself as well, on things that are happening, in the world, and just talking to you, and learning about it is making me more mindful about it as well. And then I can explain it to people, and people watching this can start thinking about how they shop and how they go about things in their lives. Oops, sorry, my dog.
Yeah, absolutely. It's small things, really, and I think a lot of people would be surprised just how small and easy it is to start building these things up. Because I might have consciously chosen to go study this, but I was unconsciously influenced throughout my life to do these things. So I grew up, I traveled a lot as a child, and when I was little, we lived by mangroves, and I remember the crabs in the mangrove trees, where you could just like dig little holes in the mud, and then they would go sit there and wave their claws. They're called fiddler crabs, and the males have a big claw and a small claw, and they wave the big claw to impress the females. So I remember digging little holes and putting sticks in there, and they would just like shovel in and then wave their paws. And having that interaction as a child, and then moving to a different place and watching BBC documentaries of scuba divers in the ocean, and I'm just like, wow, like all of these fish and all of these colors, I wish I could do that. And just constantly being reintroduced to these new natural environments that I wasn't naturally part of in this society drove me to do what I am doing today. But a lot of people have similar experiences that have led them to the places that they are now. And maybe we can create something that, just by talking about it, setting up educational programs with children, for example, and we talked about microplastics with the kids, and they were just so involved. And it's like, some of them asked me the questions like, well, then why aren't we doing these things? And I'm like, it's a good question. I don't know why we're not doing these things.
Yeah, That's it. And I think like it's amazing what you said, like, you know, to do with nature, like you was interacting with nature, and I think that's a big thing, you know, as a kid, interacting with nature, you know, and I guess you're thinking about the environment and, you know, what things are and, you know, their role in it and their part to play. And I think like, you know, kids learning about that in nature is key, because it's like, you know, their awareness and their, you know, they'll take that on growing up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a story that we all share, is we've unconsciously been led to the places in our lives that we are now. And we do have the power to consciously make these decisions and make the changes that we want to change. But if unconsciously it drives us towards unsustainability and inequality and just a bigger poverty, and the bridge between the rich and the poor, just longer, bigger bridges, it's probably not the best thing that we should be doing. How can we more positively influence people to get to better places? And that is exactly what we're doing now, is just talking about it. And even if it's just a private conversation between the two of us, you still have had some information to think about. And the fact that you spent time on doing that, the next time you're confronted with it, is going to be less resistance. And after a while, you might even build up a new habit. And these are the changes that we are implementing now, and that the world is implementing and starting to really feel the consequences of too.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you know, really accurate. And I think, like I said, it's everyone kind of, you know, having that impact, you know, in a positive way. And, you know, like I said, doing this and people listening to it, taking something from it, applying it to their life, and it just kind of like, you know, has like a domino effect in a positive way, doesn't it? You know, educating people. And, you know, with social media and the internet, it's, you know, it's an amazing way to do it, because it just kind of branches out.
Exactly. We're in a perfect place to make all of the necessary changes that we need to.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you have any favorite books at all that you like to read?
I do, but it might surprise you. I like to read novels, not so much for the story themselves, but to be able to place myself into the life of one of the characters, so that it builds empathy, it builds compassion, but it also builds an understanding for fellow human beings, because I can only live my life. That's the only experience I will actually ever have. But nobody can fully understand that, and I can never fully understand another person. But I think books and movies really bring us that opportunity to try to bridge those gaps and understand where other people are coming from, why they might be feeling certain emotions, and, you know, just having an open dialogue and an open conversation where we can share the emotions that we have without judgment, where we can share our mistakes, but also share everything that we've accomplished so far. And that's very much lacking, at least throughout my experience so far. And I find books help with that. So they help build you, build that character and build resilience within yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's good to, like, you know, see things from other people's perspectives and, you know, their imagination. And I think, you know, it's really, really important. Like, do you have any favorite ones? Like, do you have any like specific ones that you like?
I only ever read books once. So there's not one that I would say like I go back to it, but author might be Paulo Coelho. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But he has a very metaphorical, very storytelling way of going through it. But it's very informative. Like you come across yourself in those novels, and you feel the barriers within you when there's something controversial or you don't agree with. You really feel that coming up, and you think your way through that also, and you feel your way through that thanks to his writing and his stories.
Yeah, no, I agree. I read The Alchemist, which he did.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story of a shepherd's boy, and he wants to find this amazing treasure, and then he, after a while, figures out that life is the treasure, and that with every moment that he has, he's actually living this amazing existence and has this amazing consciousness that is connected to everything. Like he is everything, and he is nothing at the same time. And that's just such a beautiful realization at the end.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's such a powerful book, and I think his books definitely get you thinking, and you can kind of see yourself and relate to yourself in those books.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's one. For the kids out there, I used to read a lot of horror stories also. So Jeffrey Huntington, I don't know if that's someone you know, but or Darren Shan, he's a popular one also. Facing those demons in the stories, obviously they are actual demons in the stories, but they're metaphorical for the demons in life. So looking at how brave these people are and actually facing all of these horrific and terrifying obstacles, then I was like, well, if they can do that, then how is it that I'm struggling in this life? It's like, it's just people. They're not supposed to be scary. They're supposed to be people going through similar challenges as I am.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've never read a horror story, but I've watched it, Stephen King's books, and I
Yes.
think that's like like a reflection of like like dreams and fears and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like some horror stories can be quite deep. Like I said, there are those deep kind of metaphorical kind of messages there.
Yeah, even in it, I don't want to spoil this. Did you see the second one?
I've not seen the second one. I've seen the first one.
Okay, well then I can't spoil it for you, but it actually has quite a sad ending. What actually portrays everything that we just mentioned.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, it's very philosophical. I was pleasantly surprised by how that ended.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to watch it. I'll have to get back to you and tell you what I thought on it.
Definitely do that. Yeah.
Do you to like round up? Do you have any like role models, or like who your role models like
As
personally
any
or professionally?
biologist, David Attenborough, obviously, but also I'd say over the years, I've really come to appreciate Michelle Obama and how she's standing up for girls and just in general, any kind person. So my role models are more day-to-day people who I come across for random reasons, who are doing absolutely amazing work in the field, and you'll never hear them in the news. You'll never see them on social media. They'll never have this massive following or huge attention, but they go back every day and they continue to make an impact. So anyone who does animal rehabilitation, who's volunteering for these organizations, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to put yourself through those moments. And sometimes it can be very discouraging. And I think that's the absolute bravest thing that people can be doing, is taking that stand and not getting the credit for it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think Michelle Obama's like a massive example. And it's those people who are like selfless. They're just doing good. They're wanting change, and they're doing it, out of the kindness of their heart. And I think like it's good to have role models like that, isn't it? I think, like you said, sometimes they're not really in the media. There are a lot of people out there who they're doing a lot of good, and they're not really recognized, or they're not really recognized as such. And then you get people who are quite, in the mainstream media, and they're not really doing anything that's putting good out into the world. And sometimes they're in the media more so than some of these people who are doing lots of amazing things.
Yeah. So those who are not in the media, this is a shout out to them. Keep on doing what you do.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it's been like pleasure talking to you, and I really really appreciate your time, and I think we've really talked about some deep topics, thoughtful topics that people need to like really listen to, and especially with the environment and nature, sustainability, and I think you're doing really great work, and I wish you all the best, and your research and your studies, and everything that you want to do. I think you're definitely doing something that's really good and positive.
Thank you. It was definitely a pleasure being on here with you, and I'm gonna start following all of the podcasts.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
watched a few beforehand, and they were very informative. So it's gonna be in the background when I'm doing my chores, my laundry, washing my dishes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really appreciate that, and I'm happy that you like it, and it's an honor to have you on, and I think it's just having that positive impact in some way, isn't it? Whether that's with what you're doing, whether that's podcasting, whether that's there's so many ways, and I think it makes you feel better as well that you're having some impact. Where can people find you on like social media, like LinkedIn wise, things like that?
LinkedIn would probably be the most reactive platform for me.
Mm.
Otherwise, you can just look up white, green, blue. Our website should pop up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of changes, so there's no standard thing that I can say that's going to be a thing. But LinkedIn is our main profile for this so far.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, we'll definitely stay in touch, and I wish you all the best in what you're doing, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Weekend.
Weekend it is, yes.
Yeah, yeah. But no, take care and all the best.
Thank you. You too.
Take care. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.